All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final Action Circle gathering in the Appreciative Inquiry cycle. Today is October 3rd, 2020, and the moon is just beginning its waning phase. The full harvest moon was on October 1st, and that's the time of the month that we seal our intentions. And now we are in that action phase of the cycle where we've sealed our intentions and now we're doing the stuff that we committed to, that we said that we're going to do. My name is Abigail Twyman. I'm joining you today from my home, the home that I share with my husband, Dustin, and our dog, Zeppelin, in the community of Knockety Bay. Our Alaskan oasis is located on northern Prince of Wales Island in southeast Alaska, which is located in Tlingit, which is the land of the Tlingit people that they also shared with the Haida and Tsimshian, specifically in what is the ancestral homeland of the people of Tuxacan, or the Coast Town tribe. I'm honored to be able to share this space with my ancestors and the ancestors of those indigenous to the land I currently inhabit, who fill my soul with the fire that fuels my action. I am dedicated to remembering forward and passing along their immense wisdom for the benefit of future generations and the protection of our shared home. I am also deeply honored to be able to share this space with all the beautiful humans and change catalysts out there who have been inspired and empowered to join our pod. I'm dedicated to using the privileged body I was born into and this platform to catalyze collective action, and I thank you for your commitment to acting in the service of creating peace for yourself, your family, your community, and all inhabitants of Mother Earth. We are honored to have Sheena here today, who is hosting our Appreciative Inquiry cycle. But before we get started, we need to set our intentions and establish our agreements for the circle. Action Circles is all about learning to have more effective conversations around challenging topics, as well as effectively collaborating with others who share our vision, mission, and values. When we come to circle, we assume that all the answers to our questions are within the circle because we've brought the right group of people together with a collective wealth of knowledge and experience. Our guiding theory is that our respective change efforts within our personal and professional lives, as well as our movements and organizations, have had limited impact on the overall trajectory of the data. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to adjust our approach. By bringing voices together and guiding the conversation in a new yet very old way, we have the potential to develop plans of action which are much more likely to get us to the end goal, a truly just, equal, and peaceful world, the way it used to be and the way it always should have been. Our goal is to catalyze the spread of action circles across the world in the service of creating peace through collective action. Today we are taking action. This is the Taking Action Gathering, the fourth and final one, and where we will be sharing our stories of our appreciative inquiries, what we've done so far, and then the questions that we came up with regarding to help us define what our action plan will be. So thank you all for being here to share your wisdom with the circle. Before we begin our conversation, it's important to establish our agreements that will guide us and protect us within the circle. These 6 agreements are a starting point for every action circle, and they belong to us and can be changed at any time. I will read through them, and then when I'm done, I will also paste them in the chat box. Number 1, while every action circle will be recorded and made public, the stories shared within the circle should only be shared in a way that protects, uplifts, inspires, and empowers others. Number 2, we listen for understanding and are mindful of how our words and actions impact the flow of the circle and take responsibility for addressing any hurts we may cause. Number 3, we know that we won't solve the complex problems overnight, but we are committed to learning and unlearning so we can be more impactful with our actions. Number 4, from time to time, we will pause to regather our thoughts or focus. Silent counsel can be called for by any member of the circle by using the chat function. For instance, that's waste, why am I still talking? Or Gelmo, get it good enough, let's move on. Number 5, the chat function is reserved for contributions from those who choose typing as their preferred mode of communication, and also for gems or the quotes that we harvest during the circle. If you are also always welcome to pass by speaking out or typing pass in the chat box if you don't feel comfortable sharing or don't have anything that you feel needs to be shared. And lastly, whenever possible, we take a pause before speaking and use sound verbal behavior, which is measured and deliberate speech, when sharing our perspectives with the circle. We will make our first round of the circle to establish the agreements and check in. So please give us your introduction, your land acknowledgement, acknowledge the agreements, and the check-in question for today is if you were a drink. Right now, think about how you're feeling. If you were a drink, what drink would you be? So I will start the introduction and then I will pass to Sheena. Please take a look to see what your number is in the circle, so you can be ready to catch the talking piece when it's passed to you or pass it on when it's your turn to pass it. So my name is Abigail Twyman. I'm a humanistic behavioral scientist, a creative, I used to say creative writer, but I'm going with creative thinker right now because I do a lot of creative thinking, and a data-driven optimist. I acknowledge the ancestral lands that I am on of the Tlingit people and the Haida and Tsimshian. I acknowledge the agreements. And if I were a drink, I would be a hot cup of medicine tea with a little bit of lemon and a little bit of local honey, which we don't have a lot of local honey, so it'd be a very rare occurrence. And I will pass to Sheena.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Sheena Trayte. I am a behavior analyst, a yogi. I'm into mindfulness. I live in southern Arizona, originally inhabited by the Tohono O'odham people. I live here with my husband, Ryan, and my 2 children, Cora and Rainer, who are aged 10 and 8. I acknowledge the agreements. And if I were a drink, it's got to be something that's got a kick to it, because that's what I'm feeling like today. But I'm like, what drink has a kick to it? And that's usually an alcoholic beverage. But I don't drink hard liquor usually. So you guys fill that one in for me, but that's the drink I'm thinking. Oh, what now?
Kombucha. Kombucha has a kick and only just a tiny bit of alcohol.
Okay, let's do it. Sounds good. And I will pass on to Nikki.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki. I am a behavior analyst and a student full-time. So I haven't had a lot of time to join you guys, and I've been very remiss and sad that I could not make it. So I made an effort today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm from Arizona and from Indiana. So they both have very rich histories of the land and what we get from the land and how we use land. So I share my home with my mom and my elderly dog. I acknowledge the agreements. And when Abby mentioned a drink, I am just such a water drinker. I really don't drink much else. Sometimes some decaf tea. Not as much on the adult beverages either, Sheena. But I like the idea of water because it's so versatile and it can be shaped, from a solid to a liquid to a gas. So I thought that, that just sort of resonated with me. And I think Miss Donna is up next.
I'm Donna LaCour, and I am on the land of the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian that came before me. I share my home with 6 young people from the ages of 16 to 19. Oh, and I work in children's behavioral health. And a drink, I am really struggling. I keep thinking a hot toddy because it's a cold day, but that's the only thing I can think of for a drink. And I am passing on to Alex. Oh, and I acknowledge the circle agreements. I didn't have the list of everything going down. Sorry.
Let's see. Alex, I'm an eccentric existentialist. Let's see. I reside in Madison, Wisconsin, originally inhabited by the Ho-Chunk people. I acknowledge the agreements, and I'm gonna have to say something like mineral water. Interesting flavor, ostensibly enriched with minerals or something. Not really energetic. Oh, and I pass to Maximus.
Thank you, Alex. Nice to be here today again. My name is Maximus. I come originally from the Netherlands, and I lived in the United States since 1999. And I acknowledge the agreements, and I live in Chico, North California. We're still experiencing fires here and smoke. It's terrible. The air and the dust coming out of the sky, and it's terrible for all the people who are affected. This is the land where indigenous people have lived for lifetimes, many different tribes actually, among which the Maidu, the Mechupta, and the Yahi tribe. And there are still things to be found in the area that refer to this, and rancherias and so forth. And so my drink is old whiskey. I like old whiskey. I don't get to drink it very often. I have a friend who always, when I come and visit him, pours me whiskey. She's just always so good to go and see him. And so that's that. And what else do I need to talk about? Oh, I am an instructor, psychology instructor, and also a self-taught behaviorist and behaviorologist. And I love behaviorism, and I really appreciate being in this group, and looking forward to things to come today. Sorry that I had to leave early last time. I don't usually do that, but I'll be here the whole time. Thanks. And then we pass it on back to Abby, I think, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. All of those wonderful drinks. I love it. And I just, because, all that I know about each of every one of you. And I was like, I love it. So today for our opening section of our action circle, we're going to do a mindful listening exercise. So Sheena has chosen a song for us. And she sent me the song and I listened to it. And then I did a guided meditation, and then I wrote in my journal. And so what we're going to do for our mindful listening exercise this morning is we're going to find ourselves into a comfortable spot, seated comfortably, with your eyes closed or gently shut as lightly as possible. And I want to read to you the journal entry that I wrote, as well as the lyrics of the song that Sheena chose. And then when we're done with that, then Sheena is going to play the song for us so we can listen to it. And so I invite you all to get yourself into a comfortable seated position, feet firmly planted on the floor, spine up and straight with the crown of your head drawn up, shoulders down and back, and just breathing gently. Not trying to control anything, just allowing yourself to settle in. Closing your eyes and opening your ears and opening your mind, getting ready to listen to the words. There's something very powerful in a story, in the stories that we tell ourselves, and in the stories that we tell others about ourselves. We all have stories to tell, but many times we hesitate to tell them fully for fear of the pain, shame, and blame that could come as a result of telling the truth. However, when we get into the habit of hiding ourselves from the world and denying others the knowledge of what's in our hearts and on our minds, then things will never get better. It will continue to lead us on a path of suffering. Let it go. Let it be. Let go and let God. There is beauty laying deep inside your soul. It may be wrapped in darkness, but that is where the most sacred things are kept. It is time to reach deep down inside and bring forth what has been hiding in the shadows. The light inside of you is bright. Now is the time to throw back the shades, hang prisms in the windows, and watch the rainbows dance. The song that Sheena chose today is by Hosier, and it is called Nina Cried Power. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not foregoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the shade we should be cast in. It's the light, and it's the obstacle that casts it. It's the heat that drives the light. It's the fire it ignites. It's not the waken, it's the rising. It's not the song, it is the singing. In the heaven of the human spirit ringing, it is the bringing of the line, it is the bearing of the lie. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry power, 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 Lord. Nina cried power. Billy cried power. Mavis cried power. And I could cry power. Power, power, Lord. Curtis cried power. Patty cried power. Nina cried power. It's not the war, but what's behind it. Lord, the fear of foul men is mere assignment. And everything that we're denied by keeping the divide, it's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry power. Power, power, Lord. Nina cried power. Lennon cried power. James Brown cried power. And I could cry power. Power, 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 Lord. Bibi cried power. Joni cried power. Nina cried power. And I could cry power. Power has been cried by those stronger than me, straight into the face that tells you to rattle your chains. If you love being free, Oh Lord, I could cry power. 'Cause power is my love and my righteous to me. James Brown cried power. Seeger cried power. Woman cried power. Yeah, power. James cried power. Millie cried power. Billy cried power. Dylan cried power. Woody cried power. Nina cried power. Now Sheena will play the song for us so you can hear those beautiful lyrics with the vocals and the instrumentals to share to go with it. You might have to unmute yourself. It's not, the audio can't hear it. Sheena, there's no audio. Hold, please.
That will probably work.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheena. So Sheena, do you want me to kick us off, or do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry, technical difficulties.
That's okay.
Lord. Go ahead, Abby. I'm a little bit worked up right now.
Okay. Take a breath. Drink some water. Drink some tea. Okay, so Sheena has been guiding us on this appreciative inquiry process. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat for Sheena's website, Let This Be the Place, where she is continuing on this work and expanding upon it with appreciative inquiry and teaching people about it. So please check that out and connect with her. So where we were at in the process is that last time we were together, we talked about our system so each of us kind of decided to take on an appreciative inquiry topic of our own. And so we kind of thought about whether it was a me, a we, or an us system. And so we determined the system we were looking at. We determined our topic, and we chose our topics using like power verbs and adjectives to really get to the heart and the essence of what we're doing, and putting things in more positive, actionable terms. And then we engaged in some discovery. We asked ourselves and asked each other questions about our topics and the systems that we were looking at as individuals. And Sheena really helped us to kind of delve into and really try to discover the best of what already exists. So when we further our inquiry into our topic and think more broadly about what we might do, that we're coming from it to this topic from a strengths-based position, so rather than a deficits-based position. And over the course of the past 2 weeks, we were encouraged to come up with our own questions related to action steps we need to take to get where we'd like to be in the service of designing a plan using this different framework than we're used to, because we're used to identifying, well, what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. And now we're focused on what's right and how can we get more of that. And just kind of flipping the script on how we're approaching the problems that we are focused on in our individual lives and change efforts. So today we're going to, usually we follow a talking peace council where there's a question and then each person gets an opportunity to share their perspectives on that question. Today, we're going to be using a different form of counsel called the Conversation Council, which gives everybody an opportunity to kind of answer the question or talk about their perspectives. And then we'll open it up to the group to ask questions or share their thoughts in particular respect to what that individual has shared, whose turn it is. So the first thing that we would like to do is we would like to kind of have everybody share. We'll start with, we'll start by telling again what our system is, what our topic is, what we discovered about the best of what is, and then share some of our questions that we developed related to action steps. And then we'll open it up to conversation amongst us. And so now I'll pass it to Sheena.
Sounds good. Thanks for summarizing, Abby.
You're welcome.
So some of you may have a topic already established. I attached a few resources that you can refer to. This can be supplemental material that you use. The way we've been going about doing this is we've been looking at each and every one of your specific things that you are systems that you are wanting to focus on. So since we missed last week, we were focusing on the dream phase. During this phase, if you didn't get to it, don't worry about it. If you did, what we're looking for in this area is being completely idealistic. For example, with Abby, I don't know if you want to be a guinea pig and share your topic, what you have so far, just sort of demonstrate what we've been up to for those of us that haven't been able to be here thus far, to sort of fill in holes. That might be helpful. So she, as she mentioned, she focused on a system. She focused on a system related to her community specifically. And then what she did is she developed a topic. And doing this, we develop a topic using words that, it's a series of verbs and adjectives that really resonate with us, that fuel our change that we're looking to make within this system. And then through the discovery, the define stage, you're looking at, okay, what is this problem that I'm looking at that I wish were different, or that I wish was better? And you flip it. And you figure out, okay, what do I want to change about this? What might it look like if? And you answer those questions. There's a lot of different ways. Typically, there's someone facilitating this to help you determine which questions really are getting to the bottom of what you're really wanting to do in the world, what you're really wanting to focus on. And again, it does come from a strengths base, and that's where the discovery piece comes in, is what discovery is all about. What's already working? We clearly know what's not working. What is working? And we carefully craft questions around each one of these sections. The dream phase is my personal favorite. And so I was thinking, let's see. So the dream phase, you're completely idealistic. There are no limits. You let it flow. Whatever you can dream, your biggest dream for this change you want to make, you don't put in any limits on it. You know, just gummy bears and clouds. Very idealistic. It doesn't matter. There's no logic involved at all in it. It's not the point. It's to just really get fun, bring color, bring your imagination, and dream it up, baby. That's what that phase is about. The design phase is when you combine everything. And again, it's about crafting questions, carefully crafting questions related to the change that you've already went through all of these steps, carefully crafting questions to start to hone in on, all right, what's this thing I want to grow? What's this thing that I want to change? Okay, so I believe because we skipped a week, we were in the dream and design phases on our own. So does anyone have any questions around that? And if so, I was thinking we could take turns helping people craft questions in that area. They can share their system, their topic, and then we can go through and each take turns providing, you can use this guide. It says AI poster. And if you see that, that will help give you an idea of what questions could we help this person develop. And they can be literally verbatim from this example set of questions, or you might have a thought of, your perspective must come from a place of completely getting out of your own way, and being in this space of pure curiosity. I am really interested in what it is that you want to do. Tell me more about tell me more, and you use the framework, but you combine it with your own curiosity, and that's where it's authentic, and you really, the person on the receiving end of you helping them create their questions, they will come to their own conclusions, and they should feel fired up. They should feel hope, and they should feel like they're listened to. So maybe that's a good starting place, Abby, is for those of us that have been able to get a little bit through the dream and the design. If they have had difficulty coming up with questions, we quickly take turns offering them questions. They can write them down on their, there's one more thing I'll attach. I kind of created your own kind of template you can use for whatever it is that you're wanting to change or focus on. So I'll share that in the chat as well. And this will be for you. This will be your artifact to take with you, your personal thing to take with you, and you can use it for anything from this point forward. So I don't know, Abby, if that sounds like a good idea. If we start there, and then we can all wrap it up with the destiny piece, the deploy piece, the action. What is the action we need to do now? That's the final round. But don't stop just there. And I'm almost done talking. What we're gonna do to commit to sustain this. Because we create our action plan, but then what can we commit to sustain this over time? And who do we need? What resources do we need to support us in this thing that we're focusing on? Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. So I think what I will do to kick us off is so I think everybody who has been working on this and wants to kind of share and get feedback, why don't you like raise your hand in the participants list, so then we know like who has something to share and where to get feedback. And then I can start us out. So I see Mary has a hand raised. No, Mary does not. Mary wants to lower. I'll lower your hand, Mary. That's okay. If I'm the only one, if we just want to model it, I think that would be also a good place to start. Okay, so the system that I chose was my community here that I live in of Knockety Bay. And the topic that we came up with together, group generation, was fueling genuine heart connection. And when we were doing the discovery questions, some of the different types of questions that were from the framework that Sheena shared were, like describing the best, if like the time that you've seen, genuine heart connection actually happening and being able to describe what happened. And then things that made me proud and things that have been going well in the last 12 months. And so when I was thinking about all of those questions and trying to discover kind of the best of what it already is within our community, things that I came to is that the times when I see this genuine heart connection within our community is during regular community gatherings. So every week there's like we have a soup night, and people come together and bring dishes to share and have good conversation. And sometimes, people will like bring their guitars, and then after we eat, people will be playing music and singing. And, that's, a time that I see that very, those strong bonds between people. there have been times in our community when there's been like this rallying of support. So many times, you know, people are kind of like off in their own corners and, you know, doing their own things. But when there's something that needs to be done, when there's a, you know, the example that came to mind was when our picnic beach structure burned down. But that's a place where we do our 4th of July celebration, and that's a really big deal in our community. And so everybody, you know, rallied and pitched in money for supplies, and then pitched in labor and support in getting the building rebuilt before our 4th of July celebration. I also see these genuine heart connections when people need a hand. So, you know, there's lots of people who are building homes and different things. And, you know, when they need help, when it's like, you know, oh, we've got to get this wall raised. I mean, we can just like put a call out, like call the store and see who's available. And within 10 minutes, you know, there's a group of people down and like ready to lift this wall. And there's so much connection in our community over food and music and celebrations. Our church has, like, for Labor Day and Memorial Day, they do this annual barbecue singspiration where people get together and we're, you know, singing songs, and everybody gets a chance to, like, you know, ask for their favorite songs to be played. And you know, we're just really an artistic community full of passionate people who, you know, want to live a life that's close to the land and close to each other. And we're kind of morphing into, you know, we used to be considered like the drug capital of Prince of Wales Island and the drug capital of Alaska. But we're really kind of, you know, coming together and working towards rebranding ourselves as a recovery community, recovery from economic devastation, recovery from substance abuse, and intergenerational trauma. And that's, you know, that's kind of where we're at. We're at this precipice. So when I think of like the dream and the vision and the, you know, what this, you know, this big thing that that could be at some point in the future, I keep coming back to this idea of a therapeutic center, a wellness center where people can come, you know, no matter what they're suffering from, no matter what they're struggling with, they will come and be welcome and accepted and supported and guided and, you know, given the tools that they need to be their best selves. And so, like, the big dream is to right now it's called the Nakatuxie Collective, because we're in Nocatee, and the Tuxacan Island, Tuxacan tribe is across the way. And so I'm kind of trying to bring those two ideas together. The Nakatuxie Collective, it would be a faith-based and indigitized learning community where homeschoolers come to thrive. So basically anybody, we're kind of like doing away with the traditional education model and rethinking how education would look. And so the long-term vision is a private therapeutic school and center that's connected with Eagle's Wings, which is our the recovery program for women that is hopefully going to be opening in the next month. So it's the center that's connected with Eagle's Wings and Eagle's Nest, which is the home for the children of the women who are part of the recovery program. And we would provide wraparound support services for all ages, cradle to grave, with education, nutrition, health and wellness, spiritual, relational, vocational, housing, treatment, and justice. And you know, and like just be a place, be an oasis where people can come to heal and then transform and then go out into the world and be who they're meant to be. So that's the dream. And I have already come up with a lot of questions, but I would love to hear feedback from the group and thoughts about questions I should be asking myself and others in getting this going.
Okay, so Abby, I'll go first. So right now, everyone, I am using the template that has the different columns. There's a dream column of sample questions. And so I'm gonna look at those and maybe we can take turns and we'll ask Abby questions in her dream phase. So we've heard what she's dreamed up and we have an idea of what it is that she wants to do. So I'm gonna take a second. Okay. I think I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do a twist on one of these questions. And I'm gonna ask you, how are you going to keep this dream alive? Knowing that you might bump into barriers. Yes. How can you keep this greatest dream alive, and what would you need to keep your head above water and keep your fieriness about this, which I hear from you, you're on fire and you have a crew of people who are on fire with you. So my question would be, in the face of adversity or in general, how can you keep your dream alive?
Those are very good questions.
For now, you don't have to answer. You can just write it on your little template and maybe we can take turns.
Yep.
And maybe we all are coming from a place of curiosity and want to ask you a question. If you want to use the template I provided, go ahead and ask a verbatim question from that, because that's going to get things going for Abby too and help support her. I'm going to Nikki. Was everyone able to open all of these things that I'm attaching, which is a lot?
So I do apologize. I haven't been participating, so I am not up to speed on any of this. So I just wanted to soak things in and see what you guys were up to. But I did have a question for Abby, if that's okay. Abby, is it okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So based on what Sheena was asking, I also just wanted to, it was just, rattling around in my head, like, what other type of pro-social behaviors do you need to work on in your community to also add to its longevity? So what other pro-social skills need to be built to to help you guys hang in there and for you guys to really become a collectivist community.
That's a great one. Thank you. You can go ahead, Mary. I think I saw your hand raising.
I wasn't sure if we were going around the circle or. I had two questions. First, the one verbatim from the list, how can you get 10% closer to that goal? The whole business of just setting up short-term achievable goal that brings you closer to your goal. And my slightly more original question would be, who is the first person that you would identify as an ally to help you build this dream?
They're so great. Yeah, go ahead, Maximus.
I wanted to ask you about how you are going to present that to other people. Are you going to do some sort of presentation, or are you gonna send out flyers or for some sort of a gathering, or yeah, what kind of a, how are you gonna communicate it?
And building on Maximus's question then, how does this become the community's goal as well as your goal? So how do you get that? How do you go about getting that buy-in? That's going to be completely necessary.
I have a question about what are the spaces and the times where people come together to work on these things, because a community connections have to have some sort of place and time in which they happen on a regular basis. So it'll be important to figure out what those will be. And they don't always have to be the same. They could be different places for different types of connections, but they do have to be there. Otherwise, things just sort of drift away.
How's that, Abby?
Perfect.
Is that good stuff to chew
Yes.
on?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm so excited.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Nice.
That was awesome.
So my question is, my question is, do we keep moving forward in the design and the destiny / I call it deploy too, with Abby, or do we move on to another person? Forgive the all over the placeness of this. And I think next time if we do this, we will have a collective topic together that we will all decide upon together. And so it will be more cohesive, and because right now we're focusing on each individual's personal change goals. So thank you for everyone's patience, and fire questions at me afterwards if you need. So what do you think, Abby? Do you want to keep pushing forward with your stuff as an example, or do we want to switch to someone? Is someone wanting to share anything that they have and we help them?
I see Mary raising her hand, I think.
So I had looked at the materials and just sort of was overwhelmed by them in my space, you know, working by myself. But listening to Abby talk through it, I think I can get partway along the road in a very specific problem I've been working on, which is I train teaching assistants. Many of them are pre-service teachers, or they have just started teaching this semester. Some of them are teaching from their home country with never having been in the United States, and yet most of their students are American students. And so my system is the University of Wisconsin at Madison's English Department's program in English as a Second Language, International Teaching Assistants Training course, which consists of maybe 8 or 9 students, and then by extension, the students in the other 2 sections, since I'm coordinating the 3 sections and sort of providing materials and support to the other 2 teachers, both of whom are extremely experienced teacher trainers. So the topic is I always emphasize with new TAs that we assume that they know the content, or they can somehow easily access this. If they're teaching physics, obviously, you know, they're a PhD in physics, or they're a PhD student in physics, they know physics. If they're a comp sci person, obviously they really know comp sci. That's not the problem. The problem is, can they connect to their students? And so I always emphasize right from the start, you've got to make a personal connection. You've got to make an academic connection. In every example, you have to make a connection that's meaningful to the student. How do you do that in the age of Zoom, where your connection is only visual, verbal, electronic, emails, Canvas learning community? It's very, very different from anything I've done before. And yet I feel like more than ever, with the fatigue that's involved in teaching on Zoom, we need that connection. So that's my topic. Am I right about what I'm doing here so far? Am I like, is that a topic? Okay, great. So then the discovery phase, as I understand it, am I in the right place? And Sheena, please jump in and tell me that I've skipped something, or it would be good to think about something along the way. I tried to think about what is the best of what already is. So what has been happening in my classes, first of all, there's the real enthusiasm and dedication I see on the part of these new graduate students to do their best for their students. I mean, they really are concerned about the fact that their students are not getting the full package, especially those who teach labs. You know, they're like, how do you do a lab without doing the lab? You know, how do you teach that? And so they're very, very concerned about their students. on the first day of the class, one of the students pointed out, I guess there's something called Microsoft Teams. And in Microsoft Teams, there's an ongoing chat connected to the class, which sounds awesome, but Zoom doesn't have that. So one of the students is like, hey, we need to continue the chat in and out of class. I'm starting a Slack. I'll send everyone a message. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about, but great. You know, so the students themselves are aware of the need for additional connection. Yeah, I've started using the Slack. I had to figure out what it was first. And what I'm seeing is students reaching out to each other in the course to be supportive. So at one point they weren't able to access the videos of the class, and they have to watch the videos. It's not optional, even though it's a synchronous course, because they have to assess their own teaching as an observer. So they watch their teaching segment and they do a self-evaluation. And they were having trouble accessing the videos, and I had no idea why. And they just sorted it out themselves. And there was a lot of like, oh, make sure that, you know, EE knows this too, because I know he was having trouble. Does anybody have his email? Maybe we should email him. So they were really working to make sure that each other were connected. The same woman who started the Slack is really, really annoying. And she stayed after class. We've only had 4 classes so far. So she stayed after class on Thursday evening. And she said, basically, I understand that I'm really annoying. I don't have natural empathy. She proceeded to talk about how she was raised. She said that in her entire life, she doesn't think she and her father have exchanged 200 words. And there was another student present who was, because this is after class and they could stay and chat or they could stay and do anything. And she was saying, you know, here are the ways that I'm working on this problem that I have with not being able to connect with other people. And I think I know what the source of it is. And I had to go because they teach the next morning and I was completely exhausted and I needed to go to bed so I could teach the next morning. And the other students like, hey, let's move to WeChat. We can keep talking about this. So I see them connecting with each other and also having the desire to connect with their students. And to empathize with their students when their students are performing poorly, which a lot of students are under the circumstances. So now I'm in the discovery part. I guess I don't, oh yeah, that's also that. I guess another thing is that I'm really great at this in person. I've been doing teacher training for at least 25 years, maybe 30 years. First, informally, I would just, you know, there'd be a new teacher in the department and I'd be like, wow, this person has no idea. They obviously got no training. Let me just go sit in their classes and give them some tips. We can work together on some lesson plans so they actually understand that you make a lesson plan. And then it became increasingly formal. And now it's one of my major, like this semester, it's my main job is teacher training. And as I said, I have this sense that if you make the personal connection, everything else will fall into place. The students are very forgiving of your terrible accent or your bad grammar if they feel that you are genuinely listening to them and genuinely interested in answering their questions. And and I know that. And so I think that the students can, they can get a sense of that. They notice it. There's also, I would say another strength in this particular class is there's a guy who's just a master teacher just by nature. And you get people like that. He's teaching I want to say computer science. Most of those people are terrible teachers, and he's just amazing. He's so, even just introducing himself to the class, like you remembered everything he said. He's really good at organizing information. He slips in these very tiny but sort of humorous things about himself as he's introducing himself. And after 10 minutes, you're just like, I love this guy. I could ask him anything. You know, I'm going to learn so many algorithms or whatever you do in computer science classes. And he is another strength that I think that, you know, you just get these people in the class sometimes that you just kind of want to get out of their way and let them model what a great international teaching assistant looks like. And this woman who is so cognizant of her own emotional deficits that come up from her upbringing, she asks a lot of questions of him and about him during the class. So she's very proactive in her own, like she recognizes not only that she is an annoying and difficult person to converse with, but she's got a system for doing something about it. And, you know, I want to support that, and I see the other students wanting to support that to make her not just a better teacher, but a happier human being. And so this is the step at which I'm a little stuck, I guess, because I don't know what I would do next.
Okay, Mary, I'm going to say, I don't know if everyone's on board, but maybe we can help her out with providing different discovery questions.
That'd be good.
Okay, and so I'll just go first. And I have a couple of different ones. One's for your students, to ask your students. Your problem is that you wish you could see more connection, or you wish you could see an improvement in your students' ability to connect with their students. Did I hear that correctly? So I would be curious to ask your students, you know, what makes you feel, or how does it make you feel when you're connected to your students? Or what do you value about being connected to your students? And then I don't have any questions for you because you seem connected already to the strengths that your students have. So I'm going to see if anyone else comes up with anything else. But I do think there should be a discovery question for you in particular, because this is an important thing that you're wanting to see and improve. So for Mary, I'm going to let others chime in, but that's my question that maybe you can ask your students. So they're connecting to, all right, I'd be curious to know, is it important to them? Do they value connecting to their students first? And if they are, you know, what do you do when you're connected with your students? I pass on to Nikki if she wants to use the guide, or Nikki, you can pass and we can go to Alex and maybe you can provide a discovery question for Mary.
I'll pass to Mr. Alex.
I'm trying to condense down some of the questions that I have and make them less leading questions, because I do have my own assumptions about how these teachers are probably connecting with students and what that accomplishes. So would say you mentioned that you do see great examples of the teachers connecting and students proactively connecting with each other. So I would probably ask, when you see that, how does it start and how does it continue? And not just literally how it starts, but people can connect in different ways. They do different things literally, but what sort of shared principles might be behind different teachers connecting with different styles, or different students connecting in different styles? Are there any shared principles that are behind their different styles? And what are the effects that you see that start and continue with the students? How can you tell whether students are engaged versus not? That sort of thing. Yeah, that's what I got to start out with. And I pass to Maximus.
I was wondering how you could maybe formulate yourself a couple of questions around anxiety and around what could be done by you to reduce anxiety, and to let students respond to that, and to simply act on the answers that you get from a little survey like that.
Okay. So, Mary, I heard you say that one of your personal strengths is when you're in person, like being able to do that training and make those connections. So I think a good question to kind of dig in a little bit more is to ask yourself, like, what are those specific things that you do or have done in the past when you're in person I guess that's the first one, and the follow-up would be like, how could those same behaviors be recreated in in this new context we're in?
Thank you.
If I could tack on to that,
Oh yeah.
If time permitted, I would go for a storytelling experience. You know, I would have you connect us with a story where, you know, we, in our house, we call it in the before times. You know, when you know, share us, tell us when you saw this connection occurring, because that's where you first notice this connection is really important. But if you don't have a story, that's okay. And it will take time. So, you know, it's completely up to you. And we can move on to our next one if you want, our next section.
I can't really off the top of my head think of like the best story to illustrate this, or a story to illustrate this. The main thing is that I'm a very touchy teacher, and I do a lot of like things that my boss frowns on a little bit, in fact, because they're too non-academic. Like we do a lot of stretching. I make people get up and move around the room because I think it helps. And I completely forget to do that sitting at the camera. I like once in a while I'll be like, oh, somebody's yawning. Let's all do that, you know, but otherwise I miss that. And when you're teaching people to listen to strange sounds and produce them, their shoulders tend to tense, and that's really, that's the opposite of what they should be doing. And so getting people to sort of relax and be silly with sounds and very physical, super hard to do on Zoom. So those are some of the things that I'm like really sort of struggling with. How do I bring that playfulness and that physicality to a setting where we're all sitting on our butts in front of our computers for the 9th hour of the day? So it's like these small bits that are missing more than like the narrative. I think I kind of have, like, this is how we connected in the before times, and this is how we can continue to connect now. It's these really kind of very personal things about just putting your hands on the shoulders of someone who's working on pronunciation with a partner, that like you can just feel the tension sort of leak out of them as you do that, and their performance go up. I don't know how to recreate that.
That is, were you able to just make notes that at a particular time have people stretch? 'Cause it seems like a lot of this is predicated on being unable to read the body language of the students and being unable to see their facial expressions, maybe to hear them speak or something like that. I don't know exactly how the setup is. So it seems like it would be a good idea to just have a lot of these regularly scheduled, instead of relying on being able to see how they're feeling. Or maybe you could ask people to take a poll.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thought, Alex. And what, we've been kind of talking about and thinking about over here is, we're in this different environment. We're sitting a lot more. We're like sitting in front of the computer. And there's, even though we're home, where you might think that you might be taking better care of yourself, we have all of these weird contingencies going on. I think we're taking less good care of ourselves. So even checking in with like, how are people sleeping? How are they eating? How are they are they taking time for themselves? Like, Mary, you were talking about like that positive, like even just like that positive physical touch, like that human connection. Like people might be in places where they're not getting that. And so, almost like the havening. I don't know if you guys have ever seen or heard it, done any of that, where it's just like, being able to like, give yourself that input and just building that into the schedule, where it's just like, give yourself a big hug. And like, there's this one where you like touch your face like this and just keep doing that over and over. And there's just like something about that physical touch that, evokes a physiological, don't touch other people's faces, but wash your hands first. Sorry, I'll give all the disclaimers. But then, there's, with that physical touch and that deep pressure comes the internal physiological response of the release of the neurochemicals of like those calming neurochemicals, and the release of the stress and the cortisol. So, you know, kind of finding ways to help connect people with their biological and their physiological needs that probably aren't getting met as much as they should be.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that, because I always tell students, you know, write into your lesson plan, pause, ask a question, take a deep breath. Like, you can put that in your lesson plan. And I don't even know why I didn't ever think of putting this in my lesson plan. And I do have TAs who attend classes and teach all night. I mean, like, they are attending class at 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. My class is at 7 p.m. to try to make their lives a little bit easier, but they've been up all night. They get a few hours of sleep, and then they take my class during the daylight, because that was the goal, that they would like have a class that met during daylight. But they're on a terrible schedule for human beings to be on. So and their students are as well. I mean, many of their students are scattered around the world, and asynchronous teaching, I don't really feel is a superb answer to that.
So I've jumped in the dream phase, and we can go around and I'll ask questions through this if you want, and just keep pushing forward, or move on. Completely up to you. I'll pass to Nikki. It seems you're just sort of soaking it all in. So I'll pass to Alex. I put my dream questions in the chat. I sort of like this mental picture. That's why you see in my template like a big box, like almost like if you were a 5-year-old and you had a box of crayons, or like, you know, you were one of those like sparkly pen fans or something. You could just, you know, what drawings could you make? What picture would you paint of a connected students? But my question here is, what would be on the list if you created a menu, like, hey, I have this menu for you, and on it are ways that we can stay connected to each other in a really unprecedented time, in a time that's very challenging. This menu has ways we can stay connected, and then here's another menu on ways that we can support our well-being during this time. And what would you put on those lists?
I think that kind of would be the only things that I would ask, is what do connected students and teachers look like? And then, yeah, what sorts of things would they be able to do to maintain that connection and to establish it in the first place?
My question would be about, you know, how can technology be integrated into this vision in a way that is supportive in a sustainable way, and not overwhelming, so it just becomes, you know, self-guiding and self-reinforcing. I think, you know, technology is good and important, and that there is value in there, but thinking about how it can be utilized in a more like humanistic, natural flow of things.
Do you have any questions? Maximus, do you have anything to add from the dream area for Mary? No? Okay. All right. So do you want to keep plugging forward for Mary, everyone? Or does anyone else need some attention on their thing? Or should we just keep moving forward, Abby, for Mary?
I would like some attention on another thing. I mean, if someone else feels like they could roll through theirs, I think I would appreciate that. And like another model of it.
Sure. Again, we would probably use Abby's. So, so now we've talked through, okay, we know what system we have. Here's the problem. Here's how we kind of can flip it, where you usually use kind of really, fiery, this is really, gonna move this forward kind of topic. We discovered a little bit of the best of what you've seen in the past before, but also what you see now that's already working. And we've helped support you with some questions to see that and to see what's possible. And then we jumped into this dream thing where we just sort of kind of took that and a little bit further to help generate, to help this be a little bit more generative, to support the generativity of this exercise. The next piece would be the design piece, where we would continue developing questions that are generative to help support you with your topic. So we could either keep doing that, or if you're wanting a model, we can go back to Abby and we can continue using her example as a model for what this would look like or does look like when these are filled out.
If it's up to me, I'd like to go back to Abby's, because I got a much better sense of what the flow of this process was from hearing her talk through it than I had from just like trying to, like, I need an example, I guess. And I felt that was really helpful to me and like sort of getting my mind moving and going there.
Go ahead, Abby. I don't remember where we left off.
Oh, that's okay. So we had just kind of come up with that list of questions related to the design phase. So we talked about the big dream, and then now we have questions related to what, where to go next, what actions could we take. So, and then then the next step would be the deploy or the destiny phase. So looking at what action can be taken now. And some of the questions that were kind of brought up during the design phase kind of tapped into that. Like what are, who are the allies and who are the, like what are the short-term goals, how to get 10% closer to that goal. So I can share I do have a short-term goal. So maybe we can talk, I can tell that, and then we can spend a couple minutes digging into more questions around. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to, okay. So I told you the long-term vision. And now I can share with you the right now vision, where something that I could do right now, or the group of people. I actually do have a group of 7 people, including myself, who are fired up about making this dream a reality. So that is very, very exciting. So the right now vision, or the near future vision, is to begin, because what's happening right now is that a lot of parents are pulling their kids out of school. So that's kind of what we're looking at as the short-term context of the problem, is that in COVID land, the education system, you're starting to see like the holes in the traditional education system. And then, our community is of people who they're self-reliant. They want to be, the ones kind of guiding their children's education and taking an active role in the recovery process. But a lot of families are pulling their kids out of school and putting them in homeschool. And a lot of them are students with special needs and who have individualized education plans. And these are my kids, these are my kids, the students that I serve, and the families that, are their friends and their family to me. And to a lot of other people in this community. And we see that this is, the way that things are going isn't where it should be going. So right now, what we're looking to do is to bring together a group of people who can provide support to homeschool parents that have decided to homeschool their children, to help them with this starting point of some wraparound services, with special education consultation, independent educational evaluations, because a lot of the times kids haven't gotten the assessments that they need to really dig into the supports that are going to be most meaningful for them. We'd like to provide some individualized tutoring services and like an after school weekend and summer program that would be community led and include a lot of, music and dance and outdoor education, arts, crafts, and then be able to do some personal and professional development for people. So looking at that, the question that was, well, what did the people need to know? What skills do they need to actually be better accomplices and better allies? That would come through some personal and professional development offerings to help people. That's kind of the short term is some, being able to offer services to families and of children who have been pulled out of the traditional education system, but don't necessarily have the next thing to do yet. And then utilizing them as the I don't know, the only term that comes to mind right now is like the breeding ground for, coming together to design this school and this center, because it's not just it's not my center. It is, I've kind of have this idea, but there's a couple other people who have had similar, who share that vision. And so kind of we're coming together as more of a coalition or a collective.
Did that help, Mary?
Actually, I was concentrating really hard on what Abby was saying, and I wasn't really thinking at all about my thing. So,
Thank you, Abby. That was really helpful.
can I ask Abby a question? Do you have really, I mean, obviously you know what's involved in this and I don't, but do you have very specific things that you go, how do you start? What's the first thing when a family pulls a special needs child out of the system and you are concerned that they may not have the resources or the knowledge to give that student what they're going to need to continue to develop? Where do you start? What's step one and step two? What are the main things that you'd want if you only had 15 minutes with the family, or if you only had half an hour with the family? What would you do? Do you have a plan for that initial contact, and then what you would build on from there? And just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my in my research that I've done so far, I have found one assessment tool that's actually used by, like, in the early education department to develop an individualized family service plan. And it's a family interview that looks specifically at, like, what are the needs of the family, what are the needs of the children, what are the routines. It's a routine based interview, so it's like, what are your family routines, where are the struggles, and helping them identify. That's more than 15 minutes. That's a long process. But what I would kind of, where I would start is kind of the very core component of that, which would be what's called an environmental or an ecological assessment, which is to basically have the family say, like, what their routine is through the day, and like what their ideal schedule would look like, and what are the specific things that they want their children to learn to, to be more effective members of the family right now. Because a lot of them, so for instance, I have families that are like, my kid can't even clean their room. And it's like, okay, Nanny 911, I can help you with like a visual schedule and a reinforcement system, and something like actionable to get those, some quick wins with families through parent coaching. Because I think, a lot of what I did in my clinical world, working with families of autistic individuals, that's what it was about. Was like, where, what do you want right now? What would be like that big, weight lifted off of your shoulders?
So Mary, if it's okay, I would. There's a lot of things that I'm hearing that your heart is so full of caring, and that this has been a tough process, this whole thing, as it has been for a lot of us. So in this next and moving forward, I would be really easy on yourself, because number one, I don't know how many hours a day you're working, but if you're a teacher, you are very, very busy. And so that's why when you get to this design place, like, taking everything that we've spoken about, in relation to what's mattering to you right now, and what you're wanting to change, I would take baby steps. And in the design phase, I would recommend, what's just one thing you can commit to 1 week, the next week, that's in support of this, or even just envisioning what that would be, not even making the plan, just envisioning what would that step be, what would that look like. So handling it with kid gloves.
I would like to add to that, and I was already thinking along the same lines as you were saying that just now, Sheena. I was thinking about trust as a process, and just trusting in your abilities, that you are doing the best you can in that sense also, and being kind on yourself, like what Sheena was just saying, because yeah, you are already doing all these things, and yeah, this is just the things you've said, they're all just, yeah, this is the situation, the limitations that we are now working with. But yeah.
Yeah, and one thing, Maximus, to kind of extend upon that is this idea of, you know, what came up when Mary, you were talking, you were saying, like, you know, there are people who are already like, they're self-disclosing and saying like, whoa, here's what I'm going through, and then able to get that feedback, and, you know, finding some solutions. You know, sometimes I have the tendency to like, okay, well, this is something that other people need to do to get more connected, and it's almost like you kind of keep that at arm's length. But then, you know, taking that moment to look back, you like look inside and do that own self-reflection with your own life. It's like, if you are not feeling connected and supported and heard, then it's going to be more difficult for others to feel connected and supported and heard. And so taking time to make sure that you first and foremost are embodying that and modeling for others what that looks like. Because, and, you know, yeah, creating analogies and illustrations to help people really see and feel what that feels like. Because there's so much power in being able to demonstrate that to others, not just tell them what it should look like and what it should feel like, but really like showing them what it looks like and feels like.
I think that's a really important thing for graduate students. Anyway, they tend to have plates that are way too full. And if you're saying, look, you need to connect with your students, you know, if they're going to be able to learn from you, that's one more thing that you're keeping on their plate. And I think it's really important to show them that this is a thing from which you gain. Like, if you are connected with your students, you're going to have happier relationships with them. You're going to get better TA evaluations, even if you're not a better teacher in another sense. So this is a win for you. But I think you're right. Like, just demonstrating self-care, you know, making sure I shower might be a thing I could add to the list.
It just occurred to me a question that may help. Not sure if this has been asked before in some context, but what steps are people ready to take right now, including yourself? Just identifying how small do I need to make a step before it's something that we can just do altogether.
I'm not too concerned about spending too much time on this or asking too much, because a lot of what I'm doing is being sort of written into the blueprint so that when I teach something else next spring, or someone else tries to do this online, that it's kind of like all set up and ready to go for them, so they don't have to do as much agonizing around this. And so this is why I love the idea of like writing right into the lesson plan, which I will then leave on the, you know, like I leave all my PowerPoints in the box folder for anybody to have a go at. They'll be like, oh yeah, she stops to stretch at least once every half hour. I should be doing that, you know. The other thing is, for the first time in maybe 20 years, I'm not teaching any reading or writing courses, so I have no grading. I just feel so free because in every semester, all summer long, I have all this stuff. And so all I have now is, I'm planning, which is huge. I mean, it's 3 times what it normally is to plan these classes that I've taught for 20 years. But I mean, I feel this mental freedom from that. Like you always have, oh, I got to get those graded and get those back to them. I got to get those graded and get those back to them. And that's not there. So I feel a lot of energy around the planning phase, and I'm spending a lot more time in one-on-one conferences. And like I always stay around, and students often stay for half an hour after class, which is like not a thing that happens in real time, to ask questions, because we don't have that time to connect casually, and they want to do that. So I'm feeling like I'm not feeling overworked, weirdly. Certainly I'm feeling worked and worked really hard, but I'm not feeling like drained by my work in the way I do when I'm teaching writing, a lot of writing. So that's kind of cool. But thank you for your concern.
You're awesome, Mary, and so is everyone else in this group. And I hope everyone we went on several sort of different journeys today. I hope that you found it helpful. And it was a lot. It's a lot. I also shared a lot of attachments. Download what you will, use whatever resonates with you. Maybe we'll revisit this some other time when we have a unified topic of choice that we decide. I think it'll be fun for all of us to vote. Let's choose one thing that supports our peaceful world mission as a group and do the whole AI process as a collective. So it's been an absolute honor to share this piece of Appreciative Inquiry process with you all. This is not traditional for my learning. But I found it beautifully, I found that it beautifully supports my current knowledge set. It's less about control and more about opening up to what could be, and getting out of our own way and out of our own way to see what's possible and what could happen. So thank you so much and Abby, thank you for the privilege of letting me share this with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheena. I love how this turned out, because it was completely organic, and it gave us a new way of approaching problems and having these conversations. And I think a lot about language and problem solving and connection, and how we can, we all have shared history, and we're all carrying with us the history from our own individual lives and the lives of our families. And the more that we can have these types of conversations, the more readily we are going to be able to have, do the right thing and have the tools in our toolbox. And then the really cool thing that I love about this appreciative inquiry process is rather than always being like, fully action oriented, like, okay, what's the problem? What are we going to do? It really, flipped the switch on that. And the starting point was asking questions. And there's so much power in just being able to ask a question or hear a question and not feel the pressure to like answer it right now. Like, you don't need to have this like, reflexive response to the question, because these are deep, like meaty questions that we need to take time to think about. And I like to consider my brain, and you can consider your brain as this as well, as like your own personal assistant. And so sometimes you just need to ask your assistant a question and then let your assistant go and work on that question, and don't and let it go, let go of the control of trying to be the one who uses the frontal cortex to develop the answer to the question. Let your brain go and work on it. You've got millions of billions of neurons that have evolved to do a very important job. And so I think this appreciative inquiry process let your brain do its job, and then come back and and then let those whatever came up with that be able to talk about it and write about it. And I think the more that I've embraced that process, the more rich and deep the answers have become over time. So thank you all for joining in this process with us. I look forward to next week. Next week, we're going to do some experiential learning with sound verbal behavior. So like I was saying, Maximus is going to be guiding us in this next circle. But think about a story that you want to share, a poem, a song, something. And then Maximus will lead us, but have something that you're proud of, that you want to share with the world. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. And with that, we will we'll end and wish you all a very, very happy weekend.